Daily Talks. It's season 4, and for this conversation, our guests are Dr. Orville Taylor, sociologist, and Adrian Whyte, head of the ICT department at VTDI. I'm your host, Angelique Virtue. We're going to be talking today about developing digital literacy and critical thinking. How do we navigate this new digital world? Gentlemen, welcome.
Good day. Thank you for having me here.
Good day. It's a pleasure being here.
We are very happy to have you. Now, this conversation is on everybody's lips. It's a new world, especially with the liberalization of artificial intelligence. The digital world feels so much more upon us, so to speak. I want to talk about how are we preparing our students? How are schools responding to this? And even if schools even have a role. And I want to start with you, Mr. Whyte. How are we teaching students to evaluate information, to think about how they learn, how they do their vocational training? How are we doing that in classrooms?
All right, thank you so much. All right, to be honest, in the classroom, that has been a continuous transformation that has been going on for quite some years now. One of the key things that we want to do is help them to think critically in their analysis of the media.
What does that mean when you say think critically, as opposed to what?
Ask questions. Don't just take what is being said. You have to ask what is going on. In fact, there is a framework that we like to use, normally goes by the acronym CRAAP, where you adjust the currency, the relevancy, the authority, the accuracy, and the purpose of the document.
Love that. Now, I want to switch a little before you even finish that thought to bring in Dr. Taylor, because sometimes as you look at the information, it feels like you're navigating between two worlds. Like you feel like you're living a quote-unquote real life and a digital life.
Yeah.
How can we hold on to one, the real life, the reality, while being prepared as people, as a society, for the other immediate digital reality?
You know, the funny thing is that the digital reality and all of those things are just tools. They are really no different from the Stone Age tools that people were using in prehistoric periods. But first and foremost, you have to get to the humanity behind it. So we are always going to be having these technological advances. So you have to get to that very first fundamental. You're a human being, because you can't escape that plain humanity. So you have to get a person who's thinking. You have to get a person who's able to just simply understand things. But in the context of an educational system,
yes,
there's some basic fundamentals. That is, we still don't know how to speak and to communicate. We don't. So we haven't resolved this issue as to what kind of language we have in a country like this, for example.
Wow.
We haven't. So we speak a mesolect, and we think that we're speaking English. That kind of mix of kind of Paglish, and we're not quite sure, right? We haven't. So we don't do very well in CSEC English. And we don't do very well in CSEC math. You know, I used to make jokes about how difficult maths was, so much that when I went to the Catholic school, I saw that it killed a man because they had a dead body nailed on a plus sign. But of course, that's Jesus, right? We still haven't got there.
Yes.
So until you have people who are very comfortable with the mathematics, comfortable with being able to communicate, being able to speak in this foreign language, which is really English, right? It is a foreign language, but it is a language of instruction. So when you need to get to those fundamentals first and foremost before you even get into the technology.
So before we even go into digital literacy,
Yes,
we need to deal with our base, I don't want to say the standards,
Yes,
the
yes.
math and English.
Of course.
How do you see that playing out in ICT, Mr. Whyte? Because now people are coding, which is another language that is all numbers, and I won't even begin to try to describe it because mine and he thought it was a plus sign. I thought binary. You know what? Let's just.
All right, but the truth is,
How does it play out? Yeah.
it is the exact same. Honesty of it is that we have to know the basics. You have to understand the reason behind why we're creating the code. Right now, in today's world, you can ask AI to generate the code, but does the code work? What is the reason behind it? What problem do you want to solve? It's a tool. We need to understand how to use the tool so it can better be enhanced and take it to the new market, the new world.
So we've identified that it's tools, Mr. Whyte. Is there a way you think we can use these tools to help us with the important things, the math and the English, so that we can then now be better at integrating and functioning well and being good digital citizens in the quote-unquote digital world. Can one help the other? Do they work together in that way, in your experience?
Yes, they do. And we've been doing it for quite a number of years now. For instance,
Yes.
the calculator. Before that, we had log sheets.
And then
The tool
before
made it
that, the
easier.
abacus.
So the tools are there to be able to make life easier for us. And even in education now, the tools are changing to the point where we have AI tutors. Khan University Maths English training is mainly an AI model. So AI is the new tool to help us in this development. So it's how best can we utilize it and work with our students so that they can understand and grow with it and work on their own time.
Right.
That's an interesting
Right. So
take.
here's the mathematics is important because you are measuring things concretely.
Yes.
But the language, the English or whatever it is indispensable because you are articulating your thoughts. So let me give you an example. So you're going to come up with some kind of a model, and unfortunately you have these government policies that are instructed by narratives and ignorance. So there's a common narrative in Jamaica about the female-headed household. And so you have read about the household, but somehow in the data you have mistaken or confused this thing called a household with a family.
All right.
Right, a household is just a set of people who live under a roof. And you've seen an increase in the female-headed household, and that's a fact. And then automatically, some people who haven't thought deeply form an opinion that we have seen an increase in fatherlessness, which is not necessarily true. What you might have seen is an increase in the number of women who will graduate from university, which is a fact, and deciding to delay childbirth or to delay relationship living by themselves. That represents about 8% of the population. So 8% of the population, women living by themselves, but they are female-headed household.
But the
Somebody
father
jumps
is
across,
still,
puts in some kind of an algorithm and makes a determination that we have seen an increase in fatherlessness. Follow me? So it's that kind of thinking that you need, because many times you put in garbage and then garbage comes out.
So you're saying while the tools are here, they might run data and come to conclusions that aren't necessarily
And the conclusion
the
actually
truth.
is confusion. It sounds alike and spelled similarly, but very, very different.
Because the point is a woman might choose to be the head in her household, but it doesn't mean the father
Yes.
is absent from the
Ex-
family.
Exactly. And I use that
as an example.
Right, and I use that because guess what? When you're going to be using the AI to generate policy and analyses, it's already built upon a false paradigm. And so then when you're doing the other things, like you're talking about social policies like paternity leave and the distribution of resources, blah, 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 you already have it wrong.
So what can we do in our households? So we've talked about the school. What can parents, as they raise children, whether it is the mother in the household, both parents, grandparents, as we are now raising children in this kind of world, from both of you, because it will take different perspectives, I'm sure. What do we need to begin to do? You have a 2-year-old, you have a 5-year-old, you have a 16-year-old. What are the things we need to be saying to them to ensure that they are functioning well in the world that is today? Mr.
All
Whyte.
right, so what we would have to do is really start by realizing that this generation is already born in technology. They've been using it from
They're digital natives.
Yes, they're there. They're swiping, they're texting, they're the text-to-voice nature. And they are already utilizing the space. It is our responsibility to teach them how to utilize it responsibly. Think before you
We still
click.
need to have manners, Mr. Whyte?
Most
We
importantly,
must have manners still.
very much. The
Yeah.
problem, one of the biggest problems with online spaces is that because people believe that they're anonymous or because they're distant,
They
they
can
say
be
what they
cruel.
feel. They're cruel, they're trolling people online.
Do we still need to read books, Mr. Whyte, like the physical ones? Do you think that's still valuable to young children, or we must take everything on an iPad?
Well, both have their nature. To be honest, I prefer the iPad, but there's a time when you just need that tactile feeling of turning the page.
Patience, maybe, that it teaches a child.
You know, I think that hurricanes are a blessing.
I'm sure you're going to explain.
Yes, because from time to time, it takes you all the way back to the fundamentals. And so, that during the hurricane periods, when I have a problem to solve, I know that I can't come up with a sociological paradigm or an analytical construct or a legal argument in my household. I know that I'm just going to have to use the matches and light a fire.
I stuff like where the kerosene is.
All right,
and
something like that.
Use it.
All right. Or if I'm going to make a light with a battery, I know I'm going to do that and connect that and all of that and use a 9-volt battery with a 12-volt bulb and get light or something. I know I'm going to have to do those practical things. Right. There is something about books. Books, yeah. So you have a 5-year-old, and yes, the tablet is nice and everything, but a book has smell. It has texture, and it does something. When I watch my son, he loves his tablet. I think I'm going to have to reduce that, yeah, because I actually have a 7-year-old, yeah. So, but when he has a book and he's doing the Hungry Caterpillar, and I'm watching him going through, and I'm looking at it, and it's different from when he's doing it on the tablet, and he's smelling it. Because like I drink coffee, and he likes to smell the coffee. He's like, yeah. So because we still that, and you can't get that until you get smelly vision, right? Mm-hmm. So you get that. For a 16-year-old, they would have already gone past all of that, but then you are more concentrating on engaging them and their humanity.
Character.
The humanity, yeah. Because we live in a world where people hype up things. So I was stopped, for example, by some boys, and they said something about a motor vehicle I was driving, right? And I kind of liked the car, and one of the boys said to me, "Machine," and I said, "Okay." I said, "It ever occurred to you though that I could be not fascinating, but that's just the first 2 syllables in that word, right? Because I might not be a good person, right? And so a 16-year-old has to see some of these things, but here's a bigger difference. A 16-year-old is smart and is experienced as sub-adult and learns by what you do.
Yeah.
So there oftentimes is a major disconnect between what people say and what they do. And a 16-year-old can recognize the hypocrite that you are. And so in the same way that our political and social and other kinds of leaders are doing things and getting away with it, understand that you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so you must engage.
We must be good models.
You must be a MOTHEL, a model. You must be you must be that.
Yes.
So you must, so let me tell you, some of my greatest role models are people who don't have any degrees, people who have more sense than teeth. So ordinary little people. A little man, so Mr. Taylor, that kind of a person. Or a little man who we don't bring onto profile, but a man who has done all the right things in his rural community. He's a little church man who has a little farm. He gets up in the morning with a couple of cows and a couple of goats.
And good work ethic.
I'm saying to you, right, yes. And so we have to get back to that fundamental, because too many people in the society succeed according to the measurements that we give, coming from out of universities, etc., and fail miserably as human beings. Because at the end of the day, and as I said at the beginning of this interview, you have to be a human being first, because it's the same water that the dinosaurs drank that we're drinking. It's the same place. Our DNA really hasn't changed. We're still Homo sapiens. We are still 98% chimpanzee. But we are human beings.
There's a way in which we need
so
to
we are still the same.
So
anytime you lose that fundamental, then you're going to have social disintegration. And the best, believe it or not, the best way of making people be good citizens and decent human beings is to be one yourself.
To be one yourself. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you that we cannot forget that children are watching us, and it's what we do that they learn to do. And so, the tools are available, but we have to remember that our humanity is on show. I wanted to bring you, Mr. Whyte, to touch on something Dr. Taylor just said, which was social degeneration. We have to touch on cyberbullying and deep fakes and those kinds of maladaptations and malpractice in the use of the digital world. can we mitigate that in schools? Is there a way, we've discussed the home, and I know there's a role to play by just being a good person, teaching your children well, but what can we do in preparing students in schools to understand that right and wrong still matters when you're on the internet, and morality still matters when you're using digital spaces?
All right, so in schools, along with the core curriculum, one of the key things that we put forward is the underlying skills, the soft skills.
Okay.
And really training the students in the soft skills is what will make the difference. Empathy. You have to teach them empathy.
And you include that in your ICT training?
You have to.
Wow.
It's not just what you put out there. Before you click, is this nice? Am I being nice? Am I being mean? What would happen if this was being said about me? We have to actually put a face behind it. Right now when we're looking on the screen, everything is faceless. You don't know the individual, so you feel comfortable to say anything you like. There are some apps out there that allow you to make conversations in anonymity. And when you look on the responses that people receive when they do that, you'll be surprised as to what people are like in society.
Yes.
When people think that no one is watching, they behave.
They cannot be caught.
Yes.
We behave in a different way.
So the main thing that we'd have to be able to develop in them is being a decent human being.
And there are ways that you are identifying to formalize that in your training. So empathy is one way that we're good human beings. Do we teach, for example, at the VTDI, are there ethical considerations as you teach students to hone their skills in ICT? That's part of the curriculum?
There are ethical considerations that are part of any school curriculum, even within just the mandate of how it is that you provide research, making sure that you give proper credit. So all of this actually plays a part in developing the individual. And even, for instance, from a design perspective, you can't just look on somebody's design and say, oh, you're going to replicate it. There are considerations behind that. You can be inspired by it, but you still have to give credit to where credit comes from. So when you train them to understand that, you wouldn't want somebody doing this to your work. You shouldn't be able to do that to somebody else's work. And they understand that empathy behind design, behind creation, behind coding.
You know, there is a fundamental responsibility that we have as adults and as parents, not to make anyone else raise our children.
Or anything.
So, so there was a little man called Elder Taylor and a woman called Miss Ivy, who I recall, and I grew up in an area where at some point it was a kind of garrison. And I recall on one occasion a fellow was jumping across the wall with an AK-47. Yeah, man, about to create mayhem with some other guys who were supposed to be his enemies. Mama is at the gate and Mama does this. Boy, go back over the wall. And so, because my mother was one of those individuals who cared about other people's children, but you also have legitimacy. And people don't understand that at the individual level, that first of all, you are responsible for your children.
Yes.
Right? And so there's no excuse. You must, first and foremost, be as good a parent as you can be. Because you must make your children school ready. So you as a parent must understand these basic values that you must pass on. It's nobody else's responsibility for that. But then there are others who are mega actors, who have particular statuses in the community or in other places, you know, who get the opportunity to be something else. Too often, unfortunately, you have these individuals who are so comfortable with their achievements that they have to celebrate, and no disrespect to the service clubs, great institutions, right? But they're talking to themselves. So ask how many of them will go to a deep rural school. So like when I went to Taki, like high school, for example, people were where that day? And believe it or not, the road was difficult to get there, right? There are other places that people just don't go because it's not fashionable to go, right? But we live in a place where people, for all of the virtual reality, you have to have that reality where people see warm bodies. And so you have to do that basic socialization. But in the institutions, in schools, you must find a way of rewarding positive behavior and punishing negative behavior. So in some places, you don't graduate unless you complete some level of community service and all of that.
Right.
There are some institutions, like the one I went to back in the day, it's a long time ago, right? It's almost prehistorical, but when I went to St. George's as a high school boy, you were on the verge of being expelled if you fought. Right. Meaning that if someone hit you 10 times and you hit him once, you are both likely to be expelled because it's a non-fighting environment.
So,
And, yes, and so even with the recent campaign and people are talking about violence against women, etc. And somebody said I was a misogynist. I'm not a misogynist. I'm just simply anti-violence. Because the truth is, the majority of violence that takes place in this country is not against women. It's boys against boys. And most of the violence against women is by women, by other girls. And so we need to get to that point where we say, listen, any kind of bullying is wrong. There's no reason at all for you to prey on someone who's more vulnerable. So whether you are a 240-pound man beating up a 120-pound man, or you are 3 adult women deciding to beat up a schoolgirl who's 15 years old, you don't do it. So we have to get to that basic thing where you start teaching them to take the place of the other.
The practical
Absolutely.
tools within schools and
Yes.
families to safeguard and
Yes.
protect and ensure quality
Yes.
digital environments
Yes.
is actually by doing the
Of
things
course.
In the quote-unquote real world,
Yes.
and the children will translate
Yes,
that into the
yes,
digital
yes,
space. So
absolutely.
you can't say cyberbullying is wrong, but fighting is happening
Exactly.
on the
Cyberbullying,
playground.
right, because
you
it's
can't say being unkind and stealing somebody's lunch money
Yes.
is wrong, but you
Right.
don't teach the child.
Right.
That same child, if they understand that that is wrong, then they
Yes.
won't do it on
Right.
the internet.
Because the technology is just like that rock stone that Captain Caveman used to use, right? That's right. It's a tool,
Yes.
and so therefore, as long as you're that half soul person, right, who is not properly developed morally, there is really no difference between that rock that you throw and that missile
horrible message
that you're
you
going to
send.
fire against another place, or that firearm that you may have on your hip, or that knife that you have, or that laptop
Right.
that you're going to use to denigrate another individuals. Because one of the things that we need to also confront people, plain and simple, in this country, is that we had gone through a period that we have not done that reconciliation yet. Rwanda did it after us. Rwanda was in open civil war. We had an undeclared civil war. There was a period in our life in the 1970s and 1980s where we made it clear that persons of a different ilk, whatever they might be, not just political, were worthy of death. And we devalued human life. And we are getting that until we get to that fundamental, that very basic thing, that every single human being is as important as you. And every life matters, and I'm not talking about to the side of my eye, that matter too, right? Absolutely. All of the AI and
We'll
all
see
of the
the issues
technology
continue
is
if
just
we
going to
don't
continue to make us
address
worse human beings.
Our
Absolutely.
quote-unquote real
Yes,
life issues. We have to close out
Oh my
there.
God.
As we prepare for the future, considering how important our humanity is, what should we focus on as it relates to digital, the digital world and critical thinking?
Well, because of how things are going to be now, we have to teach them basic internet skill sets, search engine optimization, understanding how the search engine works. The few options that come at the top may not be the best response. Some of these are paid, sponsored responses.
So understanding the information. as it
Understanding
comes.
information, also understanding AI. AI has a certain tone to its language. So is this content AI? Is it human generated? We really have to have them to think, not just to accept, but to ask why.
All right, we have to end it there. We don't just accept information, we have to pause and ask why. Thank you so much, Mr. Whyte, for coming from the VTDI. He's the head of ICT, and to Dr. Taylor, sociologist, and many other things. We thank you both for coming. I'm your host, Angelique Verti. Join us for another episode of Piccadilly Talks. It's season 4.